few weeks ago, we got a message through the secure drop server that we set up for whistleblowers to safely contact us. It detailed a nightmarish secret world that purportedly exists beneath the floor of at least one Amazon fulfillment center. Really, it is the story of the year, if not the decade. If it's true. The problem is that we haven't been able to verify a word of it, and after weeks of investigation, we have nothing. My superiors are ready to call this a hoax, but I'm not. They weren't the ones interviewing these people. They weren't the ones getting stonewalled, in the way you get stonewalled when you know that somebody is hiding something. They weren't the ones getting escorted off Amazon property by cold-eyed men with guns at their hips. They're the ones who have sat around the office for too long, filling out forms and meeting with lawyers. They've forgotten what it's like to be out there in the street, letting your intuition lead you down dark alleyways so that you can reach the light at the other side. But still, my team has nothing, and soon we'll have no choice but to bury this in the archives. I'm breaking protocol here, but frankly, I'm desperate. I am looking for any information that might verify this in any way, or leads that will get us closer to that verification. I've been unable to contact our original source again. At this point, my only option is to throw a Hail Mary out there and see if anybody knows anything. Below is the original and only communication that our source sent us. As you will see, if there's even a slight chance that this is true, we have to keep going until it's all exposed. Please take a moment and read the following. Hey, I checked out the stuff you guys did on Redacted and saw you were looking for whistleblowers. And boy, do I have some shit for you. I've been working at an Amazon fulfillment center for a while. I'm not gonna say which one or for how long, just in case this message falls into the wrong hands, if you know what I mean. Not really sure it matters which one. See, they run things tighter than a cat's bunghole here. So you can bet your balls that what goes on in Oregon is going on in Kansas, is going on in Florida, and so on and so forth. All about that efficiency, you see. And I just can't imagine that they don't have one of these dungeon things set up in every single shop they have. I'll start by saying that everything you heard about how shitty it is working there is true. You've got folks pissing in bottles, absolutely having nervous breakdowns about impossible goals, moving their tired-ass bodies that are about 2 weeks overdue for a good sleep, from point A to B to C, then back to A, again and again, just really mindless, soul-crushing, body-destroying shit. All during sweltering heat or freezing cold, depends on which facility you're at and when, and all for shit pay. Well, yeah, we're getting paid better now, but that's a recent thing, and only makes the bastards work us all the harder. Point is, even without what I'm about to tell you, it's a brutal job without human dignity. Hell, they even treat the robots better than they treat us. But what are you gonna do? It's a job. Anyway, like I said, I've worked there for a while, but a while is really relative down there on the floor. People don't last long. Some, God bless them, go on to better things. But a lot of them get canned due to not keeping up with the insane pace, the targets. And over time, I started to notice something weird. Some of the ones getting the axe, they'd get the little pink slip handed to them. Always at the end of the day, of course. But others, they'd just sort of not be there anymore. Like they disappeared. Now, you don't really make friends down on the floor. If they catch you chatting, they give you hell. So you learn pretty quick that if you want to keep your miserable job, you just keep your mouth shut and do what the nice computers tell you to do. And we get 2 30-minute breaks every day, but that's just enough time to scarf down a sandwich and hit the bathroom, if you're lucky. Not much time for making small talk. And even if there were, your brain is so fried and you're so tired that it's just not worth it. Better to suck up every free moment and rest. Still, you get to see the same faces every day, and you get to sort of know the people and the few words that you do end up exchanging before work, on the walk through the parking lot, in line for the bathroom, and so on and so forth. So you know when someone gets the pink slip, and you know when somebody just disappears. The thing I started to slowly piece together is that you could get to predict who wouldn't be showing up to work the next day without getting the pink slip. It always was the same deal. Right before the second 30-minute break of the day, the same guy would walk over to you and tell you to come with him. You'd follow him across the floor and finally out the main entrance. Then that was it. You never came back. Once I realized that, I got this queasy feeling every time I saw this guy. The Terminator, I started to call him in my head. I'd only ever see him when he was about to disappear somebody. I watched him disappear dozens of people, and when I saw him walking towards my buddy one day, that's when I decided to find out what exactly was going on. I felt responsible because I was the one who talked my buddy into applying for the job. He was in a bad place, no help, so I pushed him. I knew he wasn't really cut out for it, but it was that or sleep on a park bench for him. So I gave him the push and even covered his workload for him a little bit when I could get away with it. But it wasn't enough. One day the Terminator came for him. It was just before our 30-minute break. I stuffed a package into a slot and watched as they walked across the floor. Then it was time. I followed them. They went out the main entrance, so that's where I went. There was a guy standing there. "And where do you think you're going?" he asked. "Left my lunch in the car," I said, shrugging. "You've got 27 minutes, said the guy. "Don't be late." "Sure thing, boss," I said, stepping around the guy. When you actually leave the warehouse, you have to go through security again to make sure you're not stealing their shit. So I did that, and on the way out, I grabbed my cell phone. They don't let you have phones on the floor. Don't want to waste a second of productivity. Then I was outside, just in time to see the Terminator disappear around the corner of the warehouse with my buddy. There were security cameras all around the building, so I couldn't be obvious about following them. When I pulled out my cell phone and pretended to call somebody, I had a fake conversation, sort of meandering over to the corner they had disappeared around as I talked to myself. I made it there and had a peek. They were all the way at the other end of the building. It looked like the Terminator punched something in a keypad on the wall. I watched as a bunch of rocks that were piled up by the warehouse seemed to move around on their own. The Terminator grabbed my buddy and they went down. They disappeared down the hole that the rocks had been covering up. I looked at my phone. Only 15 minutes left. I hustled back in, checked my phone in, and went through security and got back to my station just as the 30 minutes were up. The rest of the day was hell. I hadn't eaten, so I was weak, but I had to keep stuffing those packages. I kept wondering where the hell the Terminator had taken my buddy, and what the hell was down that hole, and how in the hell I could find out. I knew I had to be careful, I couldn't go around blabbing about it. Slowly, I formed a plan, and the next night I went through with it. I got all dressed up like they do in the movies. Black clothes, black gloves, black ski mask, and the whole nine. I parked about a mile from the facility and hoofed it. When I got to Amazon property, I took it slow, ducking from shadow to shadow, my heart racing. I knew that it wouldn't make much of a difference. There were so many goddamn cameras around that my only hope was there wasn't somebody monitoring them all 24/7. I thought that at best, in my outfit, if I was careful, I could fool somebody taking a casual glance at the footage, as long as they didn't have infrared shit. But if they were watching closely, I was screwed. Finally, I made it to the building itself. At that point, the sound of a mouse farting would have sent me into a cardiac arrest. I was jacked right up. I crawled on the ground and finally made it to the pile of rocks that the Terminator and my buddy had gone under. I tried to move one, but it wouldn't budge. That was okay. I had a plan. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the tiny camera I'd bought. I'd programmed it to feed the footage into my phone. I stuck it in a gap in the rocks, pointing right at the keypad on the wall. The plan was to find out the numbers that the Terminator was using to open the secret door, and then come back later and try them myself. The next day at work, I was a mess of nerves. I kept expecting them to come over and grab me. "We caught you, buddy. We've got cameras that can pick up your DNA." Something crazy like that. I don't know, but nobody came. It was a week before I saw the Terminator again. This time he went for a woman. I knew who she was. We'd talked a bit in line for the bathroom once. This was her second job. She was working alone to support 2 kids, and it was too much for her. She couldn't keep up with the insane targets they set for her, so the Terminator came for her. Same deal as last time. I left a minute after them, got warned by the guy at the door that I'd better not be late, went through security and got my phone. This time I did not go back to my car. Watching the camera feed the whole time, I saw the Terminator come into view, holding the woman's arm. Then he punched in the code. I got a clear view of every number, and when the rocks started to move, I lost the camera, but that was okay. I had what I needed. That night, I saw it all. Good God, I saw it all. I snuck back into the warehouse and over to the pile of rocks. I took a deep breath and punched in the code. The rocks moved away, and there it was. The hole to hell. I took a step onto the stairs and I heard this dull hum, like a bunch of refrigerators running. I took another step, and now I could make out some faint beeps and clicks. With each step, the terror mounted. I heard a crackling sound. There was something awful down there. I could feel it, crawling up my arms, reaching into my brain, telling me to turn around and never come back. Then I was down the stairs and in front of a door. I pushed it open and my mind shut down altogether as I tried to take in what I was seeing. A dozen or so human bodies hung from the ceiling in a circle. There were tubes going in and out of them. A tube going in the mouth, a tube coming out the gut, and one coming out the pisser. The last 2 fed into this big PVC drain. Piss and shit, I realized. And the one going into their mouths was fed from this giant trough of mush. Food, I realized. That was only the beginning. In the middle of the room was this giant blob. It was see-through like a jellyfish, and on the inside, there were these shoots of electricity going off like a thunderstorm. A 1,000 electrical wires came out of this thing. Some of them fed up to the floor above, and some of them fed into a giant computer that was constantly whirring and beeping. Meanwhile, chunks of this thing detached from its body and formed what looked like little transparent slugs. These slugs were crawling up the walls and the ceiling, and then when they got above the people hanging there, they would drop right on their heads. They'd attach themselves to the side of people's heads and start sucking away. Their bodies would light up with electricity, and then they would drop to the ground and start crawling back to the big blob in the middle. They'd absorb back into its body. I felt like screaming. I felt like puking. I felt like pissing myself. But I held it all in somehow. My buddy was there, hanging from the ceiling. I noticed that none of the slugs were feeding off him, and when I touched his leg and felt how cold it was, I understood why. He was dead. I went around the room trying to wake somebody up, anybody, but it didn't work. They were in a deep coma or something. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't carry a dozen people out with me. I needed help, so I got the hell out of there. The next day at work, I tried to think of what to do next. Go to the police? I didn't think that was the best idea. These Amazon guys are powerful. They have a way of resolving everything in their favor. Plus, I figured that somebody had to notice that these people were missing. Since they all worked for Amazon, anybody who was seriously looking into it would be able to piece it together pretty easily. So I thought the police were in Amazon's pocket, or that it was at least a strong possibility. That day I saw the Terminator again. He was walking the floor, creeping like a spider, stopping to talk to each worker. And when he started walking to me, I thought that my throat would close up and I wouldn't be able to say anything. I felt like I was going to choke to death on the panic. "You look tired," he said, staring into my eyes. "Have a late night?" "Oh, I said. "Watching the ball game, had a few too many, I guess." He studied me for what seemed like an eternity. "That's not what an Amazon team member does," he said. "An Amazon team member comes prepared each day to give his all." "Won't happen again, sir," I said. When he moved on to the next person, it felt like 1,000-pound weight had lifted off my chest. That was yesterday. Today, the Terminator was back on the floor. This time, he just walked around, from person to person, not saying anything, but like he was gazing into their souls. Maybe I'm imagining it, but it seemed like he lingered extra long when he got to me. I don't think it hurts to tell you all that. If I am imagining it, and they don't know that somebody broke into the hole, and they don't know it's me, then reading this won't reveal my identity. But if they do suspect me, then I'm already a goner. If you don't hear from me again, you'll know what happened. I got fed to the blob. So there you go. You guys are really my only hope. Please expose these bastards and tell the whole world what they're doing. They're powerful, but they can't fight the masses. At least I pray they can't. That was the message we received from this anonymous alleged Amazon employee. It's important in my line of work to have a strong intuition, to be able to sort out the truth from the lies, even without having all the information. I know that Amazon is hiding something. I'm shut down at every turn. Worse, one of my team members has gone missing. The last anybody heard of him, he was on his way to try and take an unofficial path to an Amazon fulfillment center. in order to see if he could find any odd piles of rocks around the building. He never came back, and the police have frankly been a little standoffish about this whole thing. Please, if you have any information that might help us get at the truth, share it with me here and now. I fear that there's not time to go through the proper secure channels. I fear that not even those are safe. We must act quickly to get this story out to as many people as possible. That is our only hope.